today marks a very important day for the entirety of India because today is the 73rd Independence Day for India. Now, in the speech that the Prime Minister gave at the Red Fort, Lal Killa, he said that our army gave a very befitting response to both the Chinese and the Pakistanis. The Chinese at Galwan and the Pakistanis at Kashmir. So, imagine if a conflict happens between India, China, and Pakistan. It may be very hard for India to win against both the Pakistanis and the Chinese. So, to reduce the hardness, we would all obviously call upon our allies. Now, we have three major allies, which are Japan, Russians, and the Americans. Now, the thing with Japanese is that they have been a very good ally to us. However, if in the case of a conflict breaking out or war breaking out, they have said that they would not support us because basically they would never get involved in a conflict. What they would do is they would transfer us some supplies through a lend-lease. The Russians are also a very major and a crucial ally for India. However, the thing with Russia is that it is an ally of both the Indians and the Chinese. So, in case of a conflict, it may not support us or the Chinese. It would stay neutral in any conflict. Now, America would maybe join a war with India against China and Pakistan because it has a lot of gains in that if it joins the war. So if China gets capitulated, it will lose an enemy of it and will now just have to focus on the Russians, who are not as what they used to be. So, however, with America, the thing is that they always look for their own personal benefits, and they might not come if they don't have some benefits. So it is time for India to look for new allies, and some very important and crucial countries in the world can lie in the Arab world. Now, whenever I say Arab or whenever you think of Arab, the first thing that comes into your mind is the Ottoman Empire. Now, why the Ottoman Empire? Because the thing with the Ottoman Empire is that at least at which some time or the other, it used to have control over the Arab world. For example, in the 1300s, it had control over Turkey, Greece, the Balkan states, etc. In the 17th century and the 16th century, it had control over Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Yemen, others. Now you may ask that the Ottomans didn't have control over Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen, etc. And that is because these countries simply did not exist back then. They had just not been formed, and the world didn't know about that these countries even existed. So we can conclude that the Ottomans had a very strong presence in the Arab world. Now, why am I talking about the Arab world? Now, the Arab world contains some very important countries and factions such as the Saudi Arabians, the Iranis, the Iraqis, the Turkish, and the UAE. Yeah. So these are extremely wealthy nations, and one thing they all have in common is they have a large supply of oil. Now, oil is a very important thing. It is like a fuel which can power almost anything, but I won't go deep into oil because it's a very basic thing. So the thing with the Arab countries is that they are some very powerful countries, and you would achieve a lot if you come into an alliance with them. Now, let's forget the Ottoman Empire now and fast forward to today. What happened 1 year back was, as you all know, the Modi government abolished Article 370, splitting Kashmir into Ladakh, and Jammu Kashmir. So Pakistan, the first thing Pakistan obviously did was that they went to their friends, their so-called friends, which they thought as friends. So they went to the Saudis and UAE, Dubai, and they asked them saying that we all should come together and we should say that Article 370 should not have been abolished, it should not have been taken away, etc. Now UAE and the Saudis surprised the Pakistanis by saying no, we do not want to interfere in your matters. These are your matters, not ours. And also, they told the Pakistanis that we won't issue any of these statements saying that 370 was bad, it was good, etc., etc. They would not get involved in 370 at all. Now, so this was a huge shock for the Pakistanis. Now, so what Pakistan thought that if we can't even get the Islamic world together, so this is a very bad thing and we should focus upon this. So what Pakistan then thought was like, okay, forget Saudis and the Dubai and the people from Dubai. Now let's look elsewhere. Now some of the major major countries in the Arab world are Iran, Turkey, and some others. Now Iran has always been in this past 50-60 years, it has always had hostile relations with the US. And these days Pakistan is also having hostile relations with the US. I mean, basically they just keep asking the Americans for funds, food, clothing, food, etc., etc. But after 9/11, things have not been beds and roses for the US-Pakistani alliance. Now, speaking of America, there's another major country in the Arabs, which is Turkey. Now, Turkey was one of the this countries which founded the Ottoman Empire. The Turks always had a very strong resemblance with the Ottomans, and and they were the country which founded the Ottomans. And so Turkey has always had a very crucial role to play in the Arab world. Now, from the past few years, you must have seen that the relations between the US and the Turkey have not been good at all, and so the Americans and the Turkish relationship is starting to fall apart. So now you have three players: Pakistan, Iran, and the Turks. Right? So now, how does all of this shape our future? Shape our future alliances. Now, in the past few weeks, what has happened is that the Israelis and the UAE have signed an agreement saying that UAE would now start recognizing Israel, and they would confirm the sovereignty of Israel, saying that they do exist. Now this deal happened by the US, and this just opens an entirely new chapter. Now what the US has done is that they have bought two big countries into a big alliance. Now this may be start of an entirely new chapter. Now Israel, India, UAE, even Japan, Australia, whichever XYZ country, they might come into a new alliance and they would start opposing the other alliance, which is the Neo-Ottoman Alliance, which is by Russia, Turkey, Pakistan, Iran, China. Now this is basically like a new NATO, but in the southern part of the world. There's the original NATO, which we know, which exists in Europe. However, this is an entirely new NATO, which may come in the south part of the world. Now this alliance may will be countering the Neo-Ottoman Empire, a Neo-Ottoman Alliance. Now, there's a reason why why this alliance is called the Neo-Ottoman Alliance. Ever since World War One happened, the Turks were very angry and infuriated by the Western world by imposing the Treaty of Sevres, which ended the Ottoman Empire's rule. And now, ever since that, they had been striving to create a new Ottoman Empire, which had like the even more control and even more territories. So this is why this is called the Neo-Ottoman Alliance, and this may be an entire game changer in the history of the world. Thank you.